All right, so talk to me about like what you saw was different on this question maybe than what we are used to seeing, or some of the things that you kind of saw looking through this.
They give you a very, very specific audience.
Yeah. Okay, so they do give you the audience, right? So here is your audience. Very true.
So it kind of makes, like, kind of, instead of talking generally, universally, you're talking to these people.
You are. You still have to remember, though, your audience, like this is your first level of audience, right? Your second and third are college professors, right? And other teachers. Okay. Interesting that you saw that. What else did you see in this one? Crystal? Okay. So this is all background information, right? Now it's different than what we're used to seeing because we haven't seen that much background information on an argument question. So remember, I always say, like, look for the college boards, like, golden nugget, right? Like, what little golden nugget of information are they giving you? So here is the golden nugget. They obviously look at all that information. They obviously think that you don't really have any understanding of the value of creativity, right? Or how it affects life in general. So notice that you need to kind of dig in there. There's quite a bit of information in there that I think is vital to helping you formulate your argument. All right? What are some things in there that you thought were interesting? Like points of interest in that background?
The effects of creativity, like with the Gulf of Mexico, Afghanistan problems, like
okay.
You can be creative to solve those.
Okay, so they suggest like delivering healthcare, bringing peace. So these are the effects of creativity, which it's interesting, right? Because it's not something that you may have thought of prior to how creativity affects.
It's just showing the diversity of what creativity can do for society.
Good, and I think this whole last paragraph does that, right? You worded that really well. What did you say? The diversity of...
The diversity that creativity can, oh gosh, how to botch that.
That creativity creates. That sounds good to me. Okay. What else do you think is interesting in there?
It shows that creativity is the lowest in from kindergarten through 6th grade, and the principal was writing like about classroom creativity. That's like kind of important.
Yeah. So notice that it's the lowest, and this is where the study focused in K through 6. Why is that important?
Because there are future like people that are going to be running the world.
Oh.
Okay, so you guys are in there, right? 1990 to 2010. You guys were kindergartners when? So what grade were you in 2010?
5th grade.
Poor y'all. Y'all's creativity is terrible. All right, what else do you see? Zach?
Well, it's in the 50 language. Like, it's not just one thing. It's like a worldwide problem. It's affecting everybody.
So it's global, right?
And since it's to the college board, you want to like, or not to the college board, but like to a school board whose like primary focus is educating for the future, should we argue a lot more about how this can impact the future of the world?
I mean, I think you can. I think like your conclusion, right? So remember in your conclusion, especially for argument, you can either propose a solution, right, if you don't do it throughout, or you can say like, what impact will this have on society, right? Yeah, I definitely think you can do that. All right, so let's give ourselves a little context. What is happening in like 1990 through 2010? Like contextually, what could cause this lack of creativity?
The new extreme spike in the age of information. Every bit of information and idea is already just given to us in ways of finding.
Yeah. Yeah. The age of information, different types of technology. What's happening in education between 1990 and 2010? Standardized testing. Not that it didn't happen before, but the fact that it's more prevalent during those years. So why do you need to understand that? Because that contextually you kind of are starting to understand how to develop your argument because of this, right? All right. Where is your is there anything else in there that y'all found that y'all want to point out before I move forward? All right, where is your task? You have to identify where your task is. Where does your task start?
Right to your school board.
More past that. Explain. So write to your school board is write an essay. Same thing, right? So explaining, remember we're looking for your marker verb. So there is your marker verb. Explain what you mean by creativity. So what do you see here? There are two parts, right? One, what do you mean by creativity? And argue for or against the creation of a class in creativity. That is two. So let's address this idea of write to your school board. So kids said, okay, does that mean I write a letter? Does that mean I write an essay? Do I write a letter? Is a letter an essay? Is an essay a letter? Yeah. So what you had is you had a lot of kids this year that struggled for like 5-10 minutes, wasted so much time going, holy cow, what do I do? Do I write an essay? Do I not write an essay? Do I write a letter? What does the letter look like? What should a letter be? This is what type of question? It's an argument question. So no matter what, you're writing an argument. Whether you start it with, dear school board, or if you start it with just jumping in. Either way, you're writing an argument. Does that make sense? So how would you structure these two different parts of your essay?
I think the first paragraph you define creativity, and the second you say, based off of that, why a class should be made or should not be made.
Okay. So you're going to write a whole paragraph defining creativity.
Whoa.
You can put it what? I would rather you put it in your intro. Now, what I'm going to tell you why you went that way is because a lot of times I have told you, look in your prompt, right? Look in your task to see if it helps you divide your body paragraphs, right? Sometimes it will help you. Here I'm going to say that might kind of lend you to a lower level essay if you spend a whole paragraph defining creativity. What's going to happen is you're going to define it multiple ways and you're not going to have a clear definition, therefore you don't have a definition. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I agree. I think it should be very clearly stated in your introduction. And I'm talking this one specifically, and this shouldn't be new to you. What have I always told you that you need in an argument? Define key terms, right? So for your synthesis project, I've told you, you need to define ethics for me. You need to define status for me. You need to define what you mean as religion. Is it faith or is it religion? Like, what are we talking about? So it shouldn't be a new task to you. But what you see here is that it's very explicitly stated that you must have a definition. There were wonderful essays written that did not have an explicit definition of creativity. Therefore, what? It failed. So you have to say creativity is, or creativity, comma, and put in a positive phrase in, right? You have to have that in there. Okay? Now, let me hear some of your definitions of what creativity is. How did you define creativity? Crystal? Okay, a unique progressive thought. Good. Taylor?
Innovative thinking to solve a problem.
Very good. Innovative thinking to solve a problem. Yes.
The ability to turn innovation and imagination into ideas.
Okay, good.
Development of diverse thought.
Good. I have not heard thinking outside of the box. Very good. Thinking outside of the box is going to give you a 4, maybe a 5. Because the question is, what box? What box are you talking about? Okay, then that's how you would define it, right? Creativity is solutions that are outside the norm of society. Does that make sense? So that's a better explanation. So your definitions sound great. Okay, now let me hear some thesis statements. What does your thesis have to go back to? It must go back to what? Yes, and here is your concrete. The creation of a class. You have to directly state, this is not a question of, is creativity needed? Clearly, it is. The question is, Do we teach it outright in a class? That's the thesis statement. Okay, so let me hear some thesis statements.
We're actually curious to see if this would be acceptable.
Well, I will tell you whether it's acceptable or not.
Instead of creating a separate class for creativity, increasing the importance of unique progressive thought in currently existing classes is essential for allowing creativity to be applied to this specific.
Yes, that's fine. So what you have done is you've qualified a little bit, right? Which I think this lends itself to. No, we do not need a specific class like Creativity 101. But rather, we need creativity implemented K through 12 in all classes. That's absolutely okay. What else? Zach?
Ours is not that good, but it said
Way to preface
a
it.
class for creativity would create a false environment that would lead the student to only be creative in controlled environments.
That's great. So you're basically saying no, we don't need a class in creativity. Yeah, makes sense. Anybody else? All right, talk to me about your evidence. What was hard? Specific evidence. Okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you. This is the year. Now, this is the same year. Okay, 2014 is the same year of Is College Worth It? Okay, so all year we have talked about that the argument question is to show that you are a global thinker, right? That you understand life outside of your 17-year-old world. This year, it changed a little bit from being what I feel like being like a global thinker to being more socially conscious. Does that make sense? So, socially conscious, right? Like, is there worth in college? That's socially conscious. Like, do you understand the value of what you are getting, right? Are you conscious of that, right? I think the same thing is here. Are you conscious of the value of these little things, creativity, right? So I think there is a change. Here is the struggle. What you don't want is you don't want a fluffy bunny essay. My life in school is amazing. My teachers allow us to be creative by drawing pictures in class, right? That's a very fluffy bunny, like toss or tax kind of essay. Like, tell me how you feel in this situation, right? So that's very low level. What I think is also hard is you don't want to skip to the hypothetical. If this, then that. What you want to do is you want to have very logical thinking. Does that make sense? Because this and this occur, then this could occur. Does that make sense? Or because this and this don't occur currently in the classroom or in the education system, this is how we need to redefine it. Does that make sense? So stay away from, in any argument, I want you to stay away from the if statements and move to logical reasoning. How many of you were able to find like concrete examples, like where you would refer to history or whatever? Okay, so let me hear one. Okay.
It's really good, for example, so like you did one if like when there's creativity in all the classes, like how it goes, and you said like Raytheon, like how all the individual, like when it's in a specific science class, then it's like you can
Okay, so Raytheon is a great example. So the Raytheon like competition, right? Like where you are doing something in your classroom, but you are ultimately going to Raytheon. Okay, so that is a great example. So now what I need from you, and I think we saw it a little bit in one of our last synthesis, is that here is a piece of evidence. What is the next justification? What do you have to justify about that? It has to go back to how is that transferred into the classroom. So because Raytheon is so successful, that idea or that competition is so successful in the science classroom and allows for creativity and rewards creativity, how do we translate that into other classrooms? So what could be your solutions? What do you do? Crickets. So my idea for that is, instead of us talking about Raytheon, why not bring corporations that value creativity into the school? So Yeah, so why not have Raytheon come into campus and show, here are the things that we see that we reward. Here are the ideas of creativity that we reward in science. Let Raytheon people sit down with math people. Let Raytheon people sit down with English people and understand what we do here and how can we help develop those future leaders. Does that make sense? So bring Raytheon to us. Okay, what's another example? Ben?
I was thinking about back when Russia launched Sputnik, how the U.S. started doing programs in colleges to improve education. So I was thinking about how they would improve their education to compete with Russia and other countries.
Okay, good. So you could use the space race as one of your examples. So because we were in this competition with Russia, what happened?
We focus more on STEM.
And we were very successful in furthering our future in space, right? So obviously competition is something big, right? That helps to foster creativity. So how can we take the idea of the space race and transform the idea of the space race into the classroom? That would be what your next sentence needs to be. Does that make sense? So the concrete examples I'm going to tell you are a little bit harder to find sometimes. But if they are, you need to go directly back to what is your concrete? How does that translate into the classroom? You can't just say, therefore, we need to be more creative. Ta-da! Right? That's not the answer. Does that make sense? You have to go back in and say, we can transform this same idea on a smaller scale by doing this. By simply opening up, our science classes, instead of having a space race with Russia, you could have a science competition throughout the year with rival high schools, right? So, you could, take what that element is and then translate it into the classroom. That's a great example. Anybody else have another example? It's hard. Concrete examples are hard. Yes? Okay, so what you see is you see the idea that you have to go back to the concrete ideas if you can, but if not, then I need for you to make sure that your hypothetical they aren't if statements, they are logically rooted. Does that make sense? So I'm going to give you samples. Now I just posted all these online, so I'll probably only be able to read 2 today. But what I need you to do by Wednesday is probably read the 3 through the 9. There's a huge jump in these scores. So I need you to kind of read the 3 through the 9 just so that you can understand where that jump is. And if you will open up to D for me, we are going to read D together real quick. And I've got to read D because I enjoy it, and you've got to hear the inflection, or else it's not the same. All right, ready? Let me fold this back real quick. All right. Creativity is an utmost important. Let me start over. Creativity is an utmost concern to the future of our existence. In recent studies, a lack of creativity and critical thinking in youth has dropped at an alarming rate. It is not only for our economical growth and international needs, but for our well-being. In my school, I see an abundance of creativity in students because of our availability to classes such as art, engineering, and music. Although to many this may seem like a waste of funds to continue offering these classes, only few have the mentality that these classes allow for children's minds to grow. Okay, upper half, lower half, paragraph, intro. It's okay. It's not great. It's a little unclear at the end. What is it missing? A definition. For example, I would like to become a civil engineering major, which requires both creativity and an open mind to new ideas. I'm currently in an Intro to Engineering course, which has really opened many doors. Simple projects like creating, designing, and building mousetrap cars and water bottle rockets allow for many students like myself to think critically in searching for creative ways to make a product work better. Engineering courses aren't the only thing that spark my creativity and allow it to grow, but also clubs! I'm a member of my school's first for inspiration and recognition in science and technology robotics club. How might this relate to creativity and problem solving, you may ask? Well, just a few months ago, we competed in a regional competition where we were asked to build a robot which is able to lunge 20-pound balls into goals. I mean, how neat is that? Attending the competition, I've seen teams with robots which have potential I would have never dreamed of. Courses and clubs like these I'm in really allow for students to be creative while having fun at the same time. Heck, maybe one day my team will be able to design a robot able to clean up oil spills or build rockets to Saturn. Creativity is a beautiful thing, and I, for one, would like to see this in everyone. Everyone and anyone holds great abilities but are unable to express them because schools don't encourage them. So, do the world a favor and grant the children of today the chance to strive and change the world. Okay, so this is a 4 for a few reasons. There's no definition. Okay? It is not less than a 4 because I'm kind of making the connection that there is creativity in schools. I see where he sees creativity in schools, but like the comments say like it just says what's there. This is very easily taken from a 4 to a 6. How?
Defining creativity.
By elaborating why it's important, by taking the idea of that robotics club. Yeah, that's a good example, like changing a mousetrap or a rocket or bottle rocket, whatever, and take that same idea and say, okay, now how can we transfer it into these other places? Very easy, and a definition of creativity, right? It's still lacking a little depth, but those would lend itself to a higher score very easily. Does that make sense? All right.